It was August 17th, 1943. The morning air over New Guinea shimmered with heat and engine smoke. At 8:12 a.m., a squadron of P-38 Lightnings lined up on the dusty runway at Dobodura Airfield. Among them stood Lieutenant Robert Hayes, 23 years old, fastening his harness in silence. He had flown 6 missions. He had never scored a single kill. And today, 18 Japanese Zeros were waiting for him beyond the horizon. Under the left wing of his aircraft, Technical Sergeant James McKenna crouched, watching. He had worked on these planes for 8 long months. He knew every sound, every vibration, every flaw. And he knew what those odds meant. Hayes was likely not coming back. McKenna's hands were covered in oil and dust. He wiped them on his coveralls, pretending to check the landing gear one last time. But really, he was stalling, delaying that moment when his pilot would walk away and disappear into the sky. He had seen this too many times before. The P-38 Lightning was a marvel of engineering. Twin engines, twin booms, deadly speed, and heavy firepower. It could outrun almost anything, but in a turning fight, it was doomed. The Japanese Zero was lighter, sharper, and far more agile. It could twist inside a P-38 circle like a knife carving air. Every briefing drilled the same rule into the pilots. Never turn with the Zero. Use altitude, use speed. Dive, shoot, and climb out. Never stay to dogfight. That was doctrine. But doctrine doesn't save you when tracers fill the sky. McKenna had watched good men follow those rules and still die. He had watched confident young pilots come back in boxes. And every time, the reports blamed pilot error. But McKenna knew better. He knew the aircraft itself was part of the problem. The P-38's controls felt slow. Not at high speed, but in the tight, desperate turns that meant life or death. There was a delay, a hesitation, like the airplane had to think before it obeyed. It was small, maybe a fraction of a second, but enough to kill. He remembered Lieutenant David Chen, a calm, bright young man from Sacramento. They had talked about cars and California sunsets before takeoff. Chen complained that his P-38 felt heavy in the turns, that it rolled just a little too slow. He died 3 weeks later over Rabaul, caught in a turning fight. No one ever found the wreck. Then came Captain William Morrison, an ace with 11 kills, sharp as they came. He had tried to roll out of a fight and never made it. His wingman said his controls felt mushy, like the plane didn't respond fast enough. Official report, pilot error. McKenna never believed that. And then there was Thomas Parker, 21, Boston-born, Hayes' best friend. On August 14th, he got separated during a dogfight. 2 Zeros jumped him. He called for help over the radio, panic in his voice. He said his Lightning wouldn't turn fast enough. Gunfire cut him off mid-sentence. Silence followed. Hayes never got over it. That night, his bunk stayed empty. His belongings were packed and shipped home. Another letter, another family shattered. And McKenna, he couldn't shake the guilt. He had worked on Parker's plane that very morning. Everything had checked out within spec. And yet, Parker had still died. He started to wonder if within spec was just another way of saying good enough to die. He had noticed something the engineers ignored, a tiny bit of looseness in the control cables. When he pulled them by hand, there was a delay, almost invisible, but there. At high speeds, you never notice it, but at low speeds, during tight maneuvers, that slack turned deadly. He had reported it once. The engineering officer told him it was fine. Factory tolerances allowed for it. Changing it would void the warranty. Besides, mechanics weren't authorized to modify flight controls. Only Lockheed could approve that, and Lockheed was 7,000 miles away. So McKenna stopped asking, but he never stopped thinking. Every night, he could still hear the sound of loose cables humming like a dull, flat note, the sound of death hidden in the metal. He could tell which planes were too loose just by the tone when he plucked the cable, and almost every Lightning on the line had that same hollow sound. By mid-August, McKenna had lost 17 pilots he'd worked for. Some he knew well, most he didn't, but he remembered every single one. Their handshakes, their laughter, their last words before they climbed into the cockpit. He had signed off every logbook. He had done his job. But the truth was eating him alive. He didn't trust those planes anymore. Then, one humid evening on August 16th, Lieutenant Hayes walked into the hangar. He found McKenna working alone under the harsh yellow lights. Hayes's face was pale, his eyes heavy. He asked if there was anything McKenna could do to make the plane roll faster. Anything at all. He didn't care about the rules. He just wanted a fighting chance. McKenna looked at him for a long moment. He saw the fear, the same fear every pilot carried but never said out loud. Hayes was a good kid, and he knew he was running out of time. McKenna nodded slowly. "Come back in the morning," he said. "I'll see what I can do."
The hangar was silent that night. The others had gone to sleep hours ago. Only the hum of generators and the soft buzz of insects filled the air. McKenna worked under the single yellow lamp, his hands black with oil. The metal skin of the P-38 still held the warmth of the tropical day. He opened the access panel on the left boom and stared at the maze of pulleys and cables inside. He pulled the aileron cable gently. There it was again, the slack. 3/8 of an inch, maybe less, but enough to make the plane hesitate. He knew that hesitation had already killed men. From a toolbox on the floor, he pulled out a small coil of piano wire he'd salvaged from a wrecked Lightning, 6 inches long, high-tension steel. He bent it with pliers until it formed a perfect Z. The sharp ends bit into his palms. Blood smeared across the metal. He didn't care. He was breaking every rule in the maintenance manual, but he couldn't watch another pilot die. He fitted the wire into the control linkage. The space was narrow. His shoulder pressed hard against the fuselage. Sweat ran down his back. He dropped a clevis pin, cursed quietly, found it again in the dark. Finally, the wire locked into place. He tugged the cable once more. Tight. Perfect. No delay, no slack. McKenna wiped his hands on his coveralls and replaced the panel. He stepped outside the hangar, breathing in the heavy, humid air. Somewhere far off, Japanese bombers rumbled in the night. He looked up at the stars and whispered, "Please let it work." Then he walked back to his bunk and lay awake until dawn. At first light, engines roared across the airfield. The ground trembled. Hayes's P-38 rolled down the runway, sunlight flashing across its wings. McKenna stood on the line, watching until the silver shape vanished into the clouds. Now it was out of his hands. 17 minutes later, over the Huon Gulf, the squadron met 9 Japanese Zeros. The fight began in an instant. Hayes dove from altitude, guns blazing. And then he felt it. The airplane responded like never before. No lag, no hesitation. Every motion matched his touch exactly. He rolled hard right. The Lightning followed instantly. He pulled the trigger. Tracers ripped through the sky. The first Zero burst into flame. Another dove to escape. Hayes followed, smooth, fast, precise. He fired again. The second Zero disintegrated. He pulled up, reversed, turned tighter than any P-38 he'd ever flown. The third enemy fighter appeared in his sights. 3 seconds of fire, another kill. 3 victories in less than a minute. Hayes's hand shook on the control stick. He'd never felt power like this before. It was as if the airplane had come alive. For the first time, he wasn't fighting the machine. They were fighting together. When the battle ended, Hayes turned for home. His ammunition was nearly gone, fuel low, but his heart was racing with something new, hope. At 9:03 a.m., he landed back at Dabadura. The moment the propellers stopped spinning, he jumped out of the cockpit. McKenna was waiting. Hayes walked straight up to him, still trembling, sweat pouring down his face. He smiled and said 2 words, It worked. McKenna didn't answer right away. He just nodded, relief washing over him. For the first time in months, he felt like he had saved a life instead of losing one. By noon that day, the story was already spreading through the airfield. A young pilot with no kills had shot down 3 zeros in one mission. People whispered about it over coffee, in the mess tent, on the flight line. Something about Hayes's lightning was different. Captain Frank Mitchell had watched the dogfight from 15,000 feet above. He'd seen Hayes's plane roll and twist faster than any P-38 he'd ever flown. When they landed, Mitchell found Hayes in the debriefing hut, still buzzing with adrenaline. Hayes said he didn't know why his plane had handled so sharply. He just said it finally felt right. Mitchell went straight to the maintenance area. He found McKenna bent over another Lightning, sleeves rolled up, hands black with grease. "Sergeant," Mitchell said quietly, "what did you do to that airplane?" McKenna hesitated. He could have lied, but he didn't. He told Mitchell everything, the slack in the cables, the hidden flaw, and the 6-inch piece of piano wire that had changed everything. Mitchell listened in silence. When McKenna finished, he simply said, "Can you do it to mine?" McKenna looked up, surprised. "Sir, it's not authorized. If this goes wrong—" Mitchell interrupted. "If it helps my men survive, I don't care about authorization." That night, under the same yellow lamp, McKenna installed the modification on Mitchell's P-38. Same wire, same tension, same risk. The next morning, Mitchell flew his first sortie with the change. He came back grinning from ear to ear. He told his wingman it flies like a real fighter now, not a damn truck. His wingman wanted it too. By August 20th, 9 P-38s in the squadron had the secret modification. No paperwork, no approval, just whispers between mechanics and pilots who wanted to live another day. Before every inspection, they removed the wire. After, they put it back. It was an unspoken pact, a quiet rebellion against bureaucracy. And the results were impossible to ignore. Hayes scored 2 more kills on August 22nd. Mitchell downed 3 zeros on August 25th. Others followed. Pilots who had flown for weeks without victories began returning with enemy kills. The change was spreading like wildfire. Hundreds of miles away at Guinea Airfield, Crew Chief James Watkins heard the rumor. A pilot transferring from Dobadura mentioned it. A tiny fix that made the Lightning roll faster. Watkins was skeptical, but he tried it on one plane. The pilot came back with his first confirmed kill in 8 weeks. Watkins modified 4 more planes. By early September, dozens of P-38s across New Guinea carried the hidden wire. The statistics told the story before anyone else could. In July, American pilots in the Southwest Pacific lost 2 Lightnings for every 0 destroyed. By August, that ratio dropped to nearly even. By September, the numbers flipped. For the first time, the Lightnings were winning. The Japanese noticed. Reports from the 11th Air Fleet described American fighters maneuvering faster, rolling sharper, and reversing turns quicker than ever before. Tactics that had worked flawlessly for months were suddenly failing. Something had changed, but no one knew what. Lieutenant Commander Saburo Saki, one of Japan's top aces with 64 victories, encountered a P-38 near Wewak on September 3rd. He used his usual trick, luring the American into a turn, then snapping inside his radius to fire. But this time, the Lightning reversed as fast as he did. Saki almost collided head-on before diving away in shock. The American got guns on him. Saki barely escaped alive. He returned to base confused and angry. In his report, he wrote that the Americans' Lightnings were responding unnaturally fast. It made no sense. The engines, the guns, the design, all looked the same. But they weren't. They never found the difference. The secret was too small to see, buried deep in the plane's frame, disguised as part of the original system. Even if Japanese engineers had discovered it, they might never have understood what that little wire did. By the end of September, the effect was undeniable. Japanese pilots who once owned the sky now hesitated to engage P-38s. Their confidence cracked. Some refused to turn fight at all. The hunter had become the hunted. By early October, the secret had spread far beyond Dobadura. Pilots across New Guinea were flying with McKenna's hidden fix. The skies were quieter now. Fewer funerals, more men coming home. But secrets never stay buried forever. One morning, during a routine inspection, an engineering officer noticed something strange. The control cables on one aircraft felt tighter than normal. He rechecked the manual, ran the numbers, and frowned. It didn't match factory specs. He dug deeper and found the tiny Z-shaped wire. He had no idea what it was. He wrote a report and sent it up the chain of command. For 3 weeks, the report sat on desks from Port Moresby to Brisbane. Officers debated whether the modification was dangerous or brilliant. Some wanted to punish whoever had done it. Others quietly admitted that kill ratios didn't lie. Something about this unauthorized adjustment was saving lives. But before a decision came down, the war